Moving right along, we come to the international preferences. Now, the international preferences are in several groups. Some of them you may not use very much, others you may use a great deal. The languages are the sequence of language choices that are used when you open an application. I showed you how you can open an applications package and look in the resources, and there are specific resources for each language with the text that appears in the window interface, for example. And you can choose the sequence in which those languages are searched. If most of the time you use English language applications, then English should be the first language, and you may not ever need to go to a second language. But if some of your applications are in another language that may not be translated into every language or localized, as we say, you may want to say, this is the sequence I'm dragging here. This is the sequence in which I want languages to be searched. By preference, I would like the first one to be this language, the second one to be French, let's say, and the third one to be Italian. And then after that, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't really matter because that's as far as I can go. That's my limitation. You can choose how sorted lists are shown. And again, most of the time you will just use standard ways of sorting and breaking words. Now, the next thing you can look at are the formats. And you can choose what region you're in. You can show all regions, all sorts of languages here. And what this does is to set the formatting for dates, times, and numbers that will be used by default in the operating system. So you can choose, for example, your calendar. You can customize these various formats. There are 4 date formats. There are the long, medium, short, and full. The short one has commonly 3 numbers in it. And this is the month, the day, and the year. And this is the standard US sequence. But I can move them around so that the first one is month. And I'm working on the keyboard now. I could change if I want the intermediate spacers to be different symbols. So I can choose what I want the short date to consist of. And I'm going to cancel that. I could choose, all of them work the same way, the medium date, and I can choose the format for this. Do I want a number, the month fully spelled out, the long date, and the full date, which includes by default the day of the week. And again, I can drag things back and forth, change the sequence. I can say I want, the year. I can drag it up here. Take out 2007. I don't want it here. I want the year. And I can choose a 2-digit year, and those of us who lived through the Y2K issues know that it's a good idea to use 4-digit years in general. You can put the day wherever you want it. And this will affect any application that checks to see what the current system date formatting preference is. Not all applications do so, but most respect this, and they should. Likewise, you can change the way in which time is represented. Whether you have seconds, AM, PM, a 24-hour clock, and so forth. You also have the ability to look at how numbers are going to be formatted, and you can change the currency that's used and whether you're using US or metric measurements. So all of these are going to be the default values for your operating system and all applications that respect these values. Finally, and this particularly matters if you're using a non-Roman alphabet, you can choose the keyboard layouts, what keyboard you want to use, and what types of characters are generated from the keyboard. Usually, you don't make a change here because usually when you purchase your computer, you have purchased it in the country or using the language that you are going to be using. But if you do need to change it, here's how you do it. So we'll go back to System Preferences, and you'll see that we've covered all of the personal preferences up here, except Security and Spotlight, which get their own segments in the tutorial. These are personal preferences because they are stored for each user on the system. So my international preferences are different from your international preferences if you also have an account on this system. This goes back to libraries when we were talking about the default file structure. And let me find the doc here. The default file structure, I have a library with preferences inside a user's folder. I also have a library with preferences inside the root level of the hard disk. These preferences, the personal preferences, are stored in the preferences folder for each account.